Welcome back to Real Business. When I go to the business information update. Janine Fletcher Taylor is the Marketing Services Unit Manager at the JBDC, and she now joins us to make a call on the country's beleaguered farmers to support its hot pepper value chain through the production of more peppers for the agro-processing industry. Good morning, Janine. Welcome.
Good morning, Dr. Sutherland.
Morning, Janine. How are you?
Good morning, Ralph, and I'm good. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you.
Okay. So, Janine, tell us, why is it that the JBDC is so focused on this particular aspect, the hot pepper value chain?
Well, for one, we have a unique opportunity where pepper is concerned because of the role it plays as an ingredient in many of the products being exported and many of the products being developed in the manufacturing sector. And as you know, too, in terms of jerk, something that is quite unique to us, something that we have a comparative advantage in trading and leveraging on, pimento and Scotch bonnet pepper are the two main ingredients, two main inputs. And one of the things we also notice is that for our manufacturing clients and clients in agro-processing in particular, there is a short supply of major ingredients, and we still have to be importing some of these ingredients, which we shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
The key thing I see as the main determinant of this is really the availability of information. So we definitely need the manufacturing sector to provide more empirical data around what their demand looks like, what some of the regulatory requirements are, because if they're not using the correct fertilizers and the correct agricultural processes, then it would eliminate them as a potential supplier for products that are going to be exported. You know, there are many regulations around this. So even though we may have the crop and they may be producing, the crop may not qualify for inputs in products that are going to be crossing the borders. So,
Go ahead.
So it's two things. It is understanding the demand schedule of the manufacturers to sort of gauge what acreage to allocate, what are the requirements to farm and harvest. And the second thing would be the format that is most suitable for the processors, because we tend to focus a lot on the crop itself, the pepper, right? So what we go to the market and buy. But there is a space between the farm and the processor, which is the format that the raw material is being supplied in, which it could be the dry, dehydrated version, the pepper mash, or the freeze dry. And we know for sure that farmers are losing a significant percentage of these crops due to pests and due to spoilage. So we have to look at being strategic and systematic in making sure that the farmers understand the value that they have in their hands and how they can add value to that and negotiate with manufacturers to create a seamless supply chain and a seamless process of adding value right up to the sales and marketing and export.
Okay.
You know?
Now, the demand schedule represents the quantity of goods and services that will be bought at a particular price. It's a Marshallian concept. The private sector people are bright people. Why do you believe they can't produce that? A lot of them went to Oxford and Harvard and those places. Why they can't produce that, something that is so basic in economics?
I think it's just we don't form strategic alliances. We are not speaking to each other. We are acting independent of it. So even the farming community themselves.
How can they act independently of the people who provide them with the inputs that they need for production? Is it that you're saying that they are so stupid?
No, it's not. It's not the stupidity.
So how they act independently? How you act independently from your supplier?
I think they are looking for the cheapest supply.
Oh, so they prefer to import it.
Right, and so what we need to look at too is that thing that I spoke about, the format, because one of the things about processors is that they need consistency. They need to be able to establish their production schedule on what you are doing.
But they can't do that if they don't have the demand schedule from the private sector.
And this is what I'm saying, that the information is not there. Even in terms of pricing. So let us say there's a particular pricing that is most beneficial for the processor for it to make sense to buy this product. You need to be able to communicate that to the farmers to say, look, it cannot come in above this because it would not be feasible for me
that's
to
a
buy
demand
it.
schedule. We got it. So I'm saying,
Right.
to you, why is it that the people in the manufacturing sector can't provide this information that is so vital to the farmer?
Right, so they can have better plan.
They're supposed to be very bright people.
I wouldn't be able to answer why they are not doing it, but I can speak to the fact that the farmers can become more organized. They can become more organized and they can become more knowledgeable about what are those requirements, what are the debilitating barriers, the factors that need to be considered, because they are not necessarily organized around that type of information. And so that is why we would have sought now to say, look, these are critical things that you need to know about the phytosanitary, the good agricultural practices, because these are things that qualify you as an ideal supplier. You need to look at pricing and costing. You need to look at moving the material into a format that you can store it and have a longer negotiation period.
Got that,
right?
and we understand that. But don't you believe also that the other side, because even when the farmers know this thing, what about the other side who is supposed to provide them with a demand schedule? This is what we want at X price.
Right.
So don't you think you have an equal responsibility to get the private sector in that loop too? It can't be one-sided.
Yes, and the conversation, why we are pushing this notion of value chain is that we're saying, unless you organize and coordinate in this manner, unless you are providing a seamless transition from one thing to the next, Jamaica's export mission is null and void.
Yes.
You know, and even in terms of our reliance on imports for supply, we would not have learned anything from COVID if we're still doing that.
Precisely.
So, you know, it's a lot of issues, you know, because you also have the productive use of our landmass and looking at even those manufactured goods going into certain markets at a particular value. I don't believe that Jamaica, being such a small geographic space, should go in at the baseline market. You should be looking to target high-end markets, right? And so the issue around the price that the farmer is giving would become null and void because you are targeting a more higher value market. You have a high value brand culture.
You're differentiating your product so you could
but in our economic system, we don't have these conversations. And I think one of the things that JBDC is pushing is, look, you need to consider value chain if you are talking about export. If you are talking about sustainable export, you need to work together as all the stakeholders come together with a unified strategy. You know, but I don't know. There are some aspects of it that we say are cultural. There are some arguments on either side, both the farmers and the processors, regarding, you know, discipline and reliability and consistency and all these things. And so they are all realities, but if we are going to really move the needle, it's just all these discrete private sector, not a unified approach.
So Jenny, we can't be talking in a vacuum. So are you having these conversations with Sidney Thwaites and his people at the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association?
Oh, certainly. Okay. And even in terms of clients now when they come in, at the beginning we are challenging them about the supply chain. And if they are not able to indicate to us where is this consistent supply, what is your scope of growth for us to support business development, then we are going to say this is a gap and you have to now organize your supply chain and have alternative supplies in the event one goes down, and that sort of organized processes. A lot of attention needs to be placed on processes in businesses and structures. A lot of it is on the marketing and the sales, but in the back end, when they do succeed with the marketing and sales, they scramble now to
supply.
Keep up. Right. So the conversation is happening. We did see a gap in terms of the farmers' knowledge around regulatory requirements.
All right, we got that. But haven't you seen a gap around the ability of the processors to provide that demand schedule that you're talking about? And how do you plan to close that gap? Because the gaps are not only on the farmer's side, there's also the gaps on the private sector side.
Right, and certainly we'd have to work with the JMEA on that. Right. And We see where persons are now willing, we've seen articles published on what their demand, volumes are like in terms of how many pounds and what prices they're willing to pay. But we need a structured approach to collect the data so that we see overall what the demand is like and what the price points are like and what would be required for us to satisfy.
Right.
And also on the processor side to innovate to go into more high value markets. So that conversation is definitely being had.
Okay. Glad to know that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janine.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, man, as usual. Pleasure.
That was Janine Fletcher Taylor, Marketing Services Unit Manager at the JBDC, making a call on the country's beleaguered farmers to support its hot pepper value chain through the production of more peppers for the agro-processing industry.